Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first panel session of Digital Africa 2020. In this panel, we'll be talking about navigating the new normal of education in Africa. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being part of this year's session of Digital Africa, the first virtual edition. We've had speakers introduce and make the case about the new normal in the world. COVID-19 has created a new world, and we're all getting used to it and learning how to live it every day. In Africa, education and learning has been part of a long history. As we all know, Africa has been part of several generations of innovative cultures. But today, like the rest of the world, Africa is being challenged with learning, with education, and innovation. My name is Bosun Ayeni. I'll be moderating this session. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Compumetrics and a board member of Digital Africa. As we start, I would like to introduce my panelists who will be talking here today and sharing ideas on what Africa needs to do, where we are, and where we need to get to the desired destination with education and digital learning. I will start with a very famous multi-award winning personality, an African passionate about young people with 18 years experience in fields like journalism, communication, strategy, and has been in at least 50 countries, most of whom are in Africa. She's been nominated as top level, top 100, top 50, top 30 CEOs and women in Africa. In fact, she's been specifically nominated as a top 100 influential women in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, Karima will be part of our panelists at this session, and she will be speaking to us around the impact of COVID-19 and the new normal for education in Africa. The next panelist I would like to introduce would be Dumebi Obodo. Dumebi is also online. Dumebi is the Chief Executive Officer. I think he prefers to go by Managing Director of ChamsAccess, a subsidiary of a listed company at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Dumebi leads a team that focuses on business solutions in Chams, and his team delivers the Argon Digital Learning, a comprehensive tertiary learning and management for higher institutions. Dumebi, you're welcome to Digital Africa Session 2020. Next, it's my privilege to introduce yet another lady. I'm glad the ladies have been teaching us at home, in the homes, and of course, in schools and businesses. Oseh Ibhawoh is the founder and chief executive officer of Alderwood International School. Alderwood is a early years primary and secondary school institution in Nigeria, based in Abuja, and is one of the leading and respected institutions in that space. Oseh, we'll listen to you shortly. Thank you and welcome. I have here with me in the studio Dr. Victor Odoeme. Dr. Victor is a lawyer. In fact, he has 2 PhDs, one in law and the other in policy. Am I correct?
Yeah. Political science.
Political science, yes. So, international relations major in political science. So Dr. Victor is a renowned research expert in education and is also a part-time lecturer at one of Nigeria's higher institutions. So we have a panel of someone who is passionate about young people, someone who runs a learning institution, someone who provides learning solution services, and someone who knows the trend, the facts, the research about learning. And I believe together we can make justice to where we are in Africa and the challenges of learning in the new normal. I'd like to start with Karima. Yes, in Africa, we have a rich history and culture of learning. We are well known for being the source and the initiator of some of the most successful civilizations in the past. Like the rest of the world, Africa is trying to understand and cope with the new normal, the impact of learning. can you give us a sense of where Africa is and how Africa is broadly responding to COVID-19, especially with learning?
Thank you so much. I'm very glad to be with you today, regardless of my health status. But still, we can communicate thanks to technology. Actually, COVID-19 was a very good learning experience for us in Africa, more specifically in terms of education, because the education sector, among others, was one of the most impacted sectors. So we're moving or shifting from instructor-led education to more distance and e-learning structures. That, of course, is a very good opportunity for African youth, more specifically, but also it has a lot of challenges. We've been experiencing distance learning since March. Countries in Africa started the lockdown for
We're losing the feed from Karima. Now, I'm sure that's one of the things we'll be looking at in terms of Africa learning and the challenges. At some point, we'll be talking about the challenges of learning. Yeah, Karima is back, please. You want to continue, Karima?
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. So regardless of the digital transformation that many countries are going through now, COVID-19 actually has accelerated this digital transformation, and it has impacted directly the education sector, as many governments have digitalized their services, their education services. But I wanted to talk about challenges and also opportunities as we have experienced it in the ground. So first of all, I want to talk about the social and cultural preparedness. Many African countries were not socially and also culturally prepared, because the social dimension of African families is very different from European, from American. You know, the social distancing has been a problem, and also the privacy at home is very difficult. Not all children and youth have a private space and the necessary condition to study properly. So this has impacted a lot of young people who lost concentration, and also who did not have the necessary conditions to finish their education. That is first. The second is that in Africa now, many families are, especially both parents, are working outside, which made it very, very difficult to help their kids for distance learning. As difficult also to leave a child with a tablet or a smartphone, that if they have with internet connection alone at home. Also, in terms of public and private education, I think it's a question of mindset, because before COVID-19, many universities and also governments did not believe per se in distance learning. So it was like a kind of a complementary education to normal education. Now it is by fact that we have to move. We have no choice but to move to distance learning because of the social distancing and other safety measures imposed by COVID-19. Also, now there is a kind of debate in different African countries as we are entering school in September, a debate between distance and normal learning. Because of the safety measures, many governments have issues of reserving a budget for distance learning, but also to take all necessary safety measures so that they would prepare all the conditions so that young people go to school. And also for the private education, many parents are refusing to pay big tuition fees for distance learning. So this is actually a debate now. For gender and social inclusion point of view, I think even in normal education, millions of African youth are not able to finish their education. For distance education, it's even harder for marginalized people in marginalized areas where they do not have neither the technology nor the infrastructure. They don't have the purchasing power to buy a smartphone or a tablet or even have a computer to access this technology to finish their education. So it widened already the gender gap. So governments need to think ahead of digital, inclusive digital policies so that they would not leave those marginalized groups behind. And the last point is that it is also a challenge for teachers because teachers today in distance learning have moved from being teachers to being coach because of the specificity of distance learning and because they need to put more efforts in preparing the classes, in changing the whole pedagogy of learning, because going online is not like the normal class, and many of them lack the capacity. So there should be digital mindset, and also there should be more capacity building for teachers and also for students to embrace distance learning.
Thank you very much, Karima. Very important and vital points you've measured. Here with me in the studio is Dr. Victor. But just before I speak to Dr. Victor, Karima did point out that in most Africa homes, and I completely agree with that, the kids in the home do not have their own space. They have to share space, perhaps with parents, relatives, and for distant learning, that's a challenge. Karima also raised a few salient points. So the new normal, is there a differentiation in gender? Is one gender impacted more than others? Is our social chemistry and structure and layout in Africa, does it impact our ability to embrace distant learning? So there are a lot of questions, very few answers. But I would like to listen at this point to Dr. Victor Odoeme, who is a legal advisor and head of legal unit at the Nigeria Education Research and Development Agency, and a lecturer in a higher institution in Nigeria. So from these two perspectives, definitely you would have some facts to tell us around where we are. We know COVID is evolving, but do you also have some facts around the impact of the new normal on the structures of education so far in Africa?
Yeah, let me say thank you for having me, then I'll go straight into the point. This is an evolving issue, but all the same, there are some researches that have been concluded at this point to find out the impact of the new normal on education. One of them is titled "It's Not About Online Learning, a reflection of the new normal in education." Incidentally, I didn't get the date, but I'll find out and let you know. The report indicated that the use of technology in learning do not necessarily translate to better learning.
True.
The meaning is that, or the intent is that, many teachers have simply translated from classroom teachers to online teachers without any preparation, without even knowing what the environment portends and so many other things that can go with it. That translation is not seamless. It takes some time. So that impacts the outcome of what we will find in that sector. Now, another report from SB Morgan titled "Nigerians' COVID-19 Journey, Mid-2020" indicates that people are already losing interest in formal education. Now, another report, "Learning in Pandemic, Nigerians' Response to Teaching and Learning During Pandemic," is a research conducted by the Education Partnership Center. It's an April 2020 report. It says that the number of out-of-school children increased from 10.2 million to 3.6 million within this short period. Then, children are regressing in their learning, whereas many others do not have any plan to return to school. Now, another report by an article rather by Adeoye, Adenika, and Adenika, titled COVID-19 and E-Learning, Nigerian Tertiary Education Experience, is pointing out to the fact that, yes, a lot is happening in the e-learning space, but developing countries are just not anywhere to be found. And that is hinged on the degree of preparedness for the transition from normal classroom learning to online learning environment. Then another from the World Economic Forum is also pointing out to the challenges that are dramatically playing out in the e-learning environment, and many more other reports. So what we are trying to say here is that, whereas it's an evolving issue, is posing a big challenge. It's posing a big challenge in terms of pedagogy, which Karima has mentioned. Education, oftentimes, as it is being present in Africa, has been teacher-centered, even with the advocacy that it should be student-centered.
Yeah.
So that transition is not going to happen simply because you move from classroom to online environment. So teachers are supposed to be, retooled to get ready to teach an online environment where the student is the center of learning, and the resources are made available to them at their own spaces. So many other things are in line with what Karima has said. We know the cost of getting devices to use, challenges of space. Even when you have space and devices, how about electricity? I teach, and any day that I have to teach, I have to be sure that I'm staying in a location where there is network. I don't have good network in my office, so I stay home where I have good network. I run my generators for the 2 hours I teach to be sure that I'm not cut off, or I'm not staying in the dark and things like that. So many other issues that are coming up are also in the issue of assessment, grading. When you teach an online environment in a forced situation like this, because people are forced to transit from in-class learning to online learning, what becomes of the assessment, where the teacher cannot say, look, I know this number of students participated effectively. The feedback mechanism has not been so strengthened for you to know who is on and who is not catching up. Then we know that some people are entirely cut off. In a class of 20, you find out that people who are effectively participating in an online lessons are less than 15. What happens to the 5 who are perpetually absent simply because they live in remote areas, or they live in communities where there are no access to network, no access to electricity, or don't even have access to the device? So that also affects the issue of access to education. And even when the students are online, like Karima said, in their own private space, assuming that was possible in Africa, there are several other issues that are coming up. While the tech companies are busy making sure that the applications are out there to make sure that there's a link between the learner and the teacher, the content developers are doing the same. So also are the fraudsters online. So these days we have the issues of cyberbullying, what I got to learn that is called Zoom bombing. These are issues that are affecting children's, particularly younger persons' e-learning experience. And that is more dangerous when such is conducted in an environment where there is no teacher to look through your shoulders or a parent to watch what you're doing. So, but I know that it's an evolving process. Somewhere along the line, we will make it.
Thank you, Dr. Victor. I find it interesting. There is a pattern of issues, challenges, but we need to begin to also look at the solutions. So there is some consistency in the view. So the pedagogy of learning, of delivering the content. So the challenges of infrastructure, the challenges of access. Yes, these challenges are true and they are real. But then you also mentioned some very interesting points. And to me, that's 2 points I would identify right away. The first is that if you transit a teacher from a classroom teacher to an online teacher, doesn't necessarily make the teacher better.
No, it doesn't.
So the quality of teaching that you deliver in classroom is not likely to be any better just because you're using technology.
That's correct.
I mean, this is a very, very, very useful point for teachers and the whole learning structure. The second point you mentioned, which I'm sure we'll discuss in a bit more details later, is the issue of cost, which directly impact access. So, but before we come back to that, you've talked around a number of issues that I think that our next speaker, who runs an education institution, who experiences firsthand every day the challenges of teaching, getting teachers to deliver quality learning to the students, and making sure that the students who are left behind are brought on board, and all the challenges she has to deal with. So I'd like to invite Oseh to please explain to us and to the world and to Africa, what has it been running a learning institution at this time? What are the challenges? And then overall, how has the new normal impacted the different categories of learning institutions? You run a early stage primary and secondary school. What has been your experience?
Good morning. Thank you very much, Bosun. Good morning, panelists and everyone watching. I'm very happy to be here and lend my voice to something that's impacting everyone around the world. As you said, it's the new normal, and I don't want to belabor the problems and the challenges that we face in this new normal, because the speakers before me have done it enough justice. There are some other challenges we face as school owners. Of course, when you talk about the finances, you talk about teachers training and all of that. Those are the challenges. But for me, when we say new normal, I see the opportunities in it, not the challenges alone. Of course, there are challenges, but I think we should also shift our mindsets, because whether we like it or not, there's a shift happening in the world right now. The pandemic has forced a shift, and I think it's time that we start to embrace this shift. It's like the earth. Whether you like it or not, it's going to rotate. You can't fight it. It will rotate. You can't even get off. It's the same situation we're facing here. A shift is happening. It's a generational shift. The way we learned in school, the way our parents learned, our children are not going to learn that way. So the onus is on us as adults first to unlearn what we've been taught all our lives and start to relearn new things. I'm sure most of us here are parents or teachers, so we've interacted with children. I would like to ask, has anyone ever sat their 2-year-old, even 1-year-old down and taught them how to use the iPad? I'm sure the answer is no. You don't teach children how to use the iPad. Even your phone, if they keep beside you long enough, they'll know your code, your password, and they can get into your phone and they can go to their games and help themselves. So I think the block, first of all, is from us adults, because we know we should, or we think we should learn this in this way to get this result. But it doesn't always follow. This shift is happening. I'll give you an example. In the past, we used to use paper CVs. Some people still do. Some people of our generation still do. But it'll interest you to know that the millennials don't use paper CVs anymore. They send in videos. So if I want to apply for a job at Digital Africa, I make a video presentation of myself, telling you what I can do, telling you what my skills are, and then I send it to you. So it's more interactive. You're able to read me and understand me better. And then when you have a conversation with me, it's more in-depth. Also, the example of advertisements. Newspaper adverts are still good, but you cannot compare the reach to social media. If you put your advertisement on social media, there is no limit to who can see that advertisement. People in Texas can see it. People in India can see it. People in Morocco can see it. So technology is breaking the boundaries that traditional methods have put for us. So we, as the government, as the institutions, service providers, we must step up to the plate accept that this is the new normal. I don't have the solutions in terms of the cost of internet or the infrastructure. That's up to the government, that's up to the service providers. But we have to change our mindset so that we can get on board with this change that is happening. Can the online and digital learning replace traditional learning? The answer is no. They complement each other. Yeah. So there are people who will not have access to online learning because of all the problems that are bound. So the traditional learning should still be there. We are not saying take it away. It should still remain. There are skills, valuable skills we gain from traditional learning methods in the classroom, social skills, learning to read innuendos and body language. It's a bit difficult and challenging to do that online. Yeah. So my message is we have to adjust our thinking. There has to be a paradigm shift to accept this new normal as part of education and start to think towards providing solutions for these things so that we can get to a stage where digital education complements traditional education. So if my son wants to learn to play the saxophone, and of course, saxophone teachers are not everywhere, they're few and far between. What do I do if the only saxophone teacher that I know that's very good lives in Lagos and my son lives in Abuja? I can go on YouTube. My son can learn to play the saxophone on YouTube. If my son wants to learn coding and the coding class is too expensive, he can go on the internet. There are lots of resources available to learn new skills. So in terms of this new normal, I think that in addition to the challenges, we should embrace the opportunities it brings. The teachers, I would call on all school owners and the government to train the teachers because, like you said, a lot of them are used to delivering their classes in the traditional method. And it is not enough to take your lesson plan, which you had planned for in-person instruction, and just, come online and read it the way you would in the classroom. No, you cannot do that. In our school, we've trained our teachers, and I expect that most school owners would have done the same. Train your teachers. There's a lot more that goes into it. You have to be able to hold children's attention. So things like before you start a class for early years or primary age, you sing songs, you play games during the classroom because, of course, the attention span varies depending on their age group. Early years attention span, you cannot compare it to secondary students' attention span. So with that in mind, you make your class interactive. There are other ideas, if they go online, do your research. I recently took a course at Harvard to increase my knowledge on how to engage the children during online classes. I can do that, but the teacher in a government school cannot do that because they cannot afford it. So it's up to the government to train their people so that we can deliver these lessons, because whether we like it or not, it is happening. As Karima said, children haven't gone to school since March. Millions of children, they haven't learned anything. The government has to provide the infrastructure to make it possible for them to be able to continue learning in such a situation. And my ultimate message is traditional learning cannot be replaced by digital learning. I just want a situation where they complement each other. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oseh. It's exciting to hear from someone who owns and runs the school. You're living the challenges every day. Thank you for what you do for millions, hundreds of kids out there. It's people like you that's making sure that African kids have a future. Thank you so much. I would like to come back to you later on, Oseh, so that you answer a specific question. There are tons of people in position of authority in government, industry players who are looking for what to do for schools to solve the challenge of learning in the new normal in a sustainable manner. My question to you, I'll come back in a bit, would be what exactly would you like to see government do or the industry do to assist schools and school owners to wrap up on delivering quality education in the new normal? Now, before I come to you, I like to go to Dumebi. Now, I like to go to Dumebi because for people in the tech space, we've been talking about fourth industrial revolution, exponential technologies. We've been looking at these things and we've been saying they will impact every industry and not least learning. And there are specific technologies that have been identified to make a huge difference in this space: artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, conferencing. These robotics, whatever, you can pick any of them. And these ones I've mentioned have been pinned down, identified to make a significant impact in learning. In fact, one of the challenges we hear is social learning. In future, by the time augmented reality is everywhere, perhaps we can deliver learning with the complete experience of a classroom, including the social skills. But how long will it take us to get there? The technology space has also been pushed into this sudden new normal as against our projection that augmented reality, for example, will be available in every school. So what solutions are there today? What can schools do today? And then what is the future in terms of technology assisting learning from your experience?
Thank you very much, Bosun, and thank you so much to the panelists. So let me start by saying there are nice to haves, right? And there are practicable solutions in our environment. So the nice to haves are the artificial intelligence, machine learning, augmented reality, as you mentioned, right? Yes, the potential, the power of such innovative technologies to deliver good learning environment, deliver education is not in doubt. But the question is, to what degree, what's the reach? How many people will be covered? Considering in the context of Africa and in particular Nigeria. So today we have the quick fixes, what I would call it, quick fixes, adoption of online learning. I would say 20-30% of the schools in the metropolis. What happens to the child in the rural area? What happens to the child in that environment that you do not have electricity? Neither do they have smartphones, and they don't have network coverage, telco network coverage, and things like that. So that takes us to the two broad areas I want us to look at it from. One is education as business, and then of course is education as a social service. I will concentrate more on education as a social service. Now today, with specific reference to Nigeria, you have about 170 lines, telco lines. And then we have, let's take an average of 2 lines per person. We're talking of about 75, 80 million phones. Out of that, you're talking about 35 million smartphones. The rest are feature phones. Is there a possibility that we can leverage USSD, what you call short codes, to provide learning to these children out there? Is there a possibility that we can do a combo of smart toys and smart games and distribute to these children? Because it has to be a multifaceted approach. And that's the reality, that's the situation we face as Africans and as Nigerians. So these kids must reach out to these kids, leveraging some of these technologies that are practicable in their environment, right? So it requires the government, it requires the private sector coming together to provide this infrastructure. Now, if you take it back to education as business, and of course, it's interesting what has happened in the cities. The schools have quickly adopted the online learning, but even within the metropolis, you still have a good number of students who are not able to latch on to this new, this first normal that we embrace today. So there has to be a combination of solutions. The online learning has been exhaustively discussed by Karima, Oseh, and Dr. And of course, everybody is forced to adapt. The child is forced to adapt. The teacher is forced to adapt, not so skilled in delivering digital content. And of course, it's also important at this point for us to look at context and content. There's so much rush around Edmodo, and of course, for obvious reasons, done with all those platforms. But how do we contextualize some of those platforms? How do we build our own content? The content that ensures we replicate to a large degree a classroom teaching, that tries to mimic a classroom teaching. It's tough, but it's doable. So it creates opportunities around the content developers. It creates opportunities around the telco, around the people who play in the technology industry. It creates opportunity for the government, because once we have bigger reach, of course, it's more numbers, better planning for the government. So as Oseh rightly mentioned, there are huge opportunities, even though the challenges are humongous, but there are huge opportunities that the technology space can latch onto and provide good learning environment for our kids, both in urban cities and the rural environment.
Thank you very much, Dumebi. Technology, learning as a social service, and then education as a business. That's a very, very nice way to put it. Now, of course, as a social service, we would rely a lot of people who do social businesses. Today there are a lot of commercial businesses that will tell you they are social entrepreneurs, and social entrepreneurship is also gaining ground. So perhaps education, servicing the education sector requires a new thinking, a new relearning, a new approach of complete social and outlook. Thank you very much, Dumebi, for that. I'd like to come back to Oseh now. I asked the question earlier, and the question again is, as a business owner in the education space, what would you like specifically to see government or regulators do? This is your chance for a bailout campaign. This is your chance for a bailout campaign. On behalf of your colleagues, right? So yes. What would you like to see government and the regulators do specifically for that industry? And if you'd like to extend that to providers of services in education, that would be fine.
Yes, thank you very much, Bosun. There's a lot the government can do. There's a lot service providers can do, but I'll start from the government because everything behoves on them at the end of the day. First of all, like Dr. Sandip had informed us earlier, unfortunately, he's not here to expand on it more. The cost of internet. Cost is a major factor why digital education is not available to everybody. And the cost ranges from the cost of your devices to the cost of the internet to, everything else that is necessary for education to happen. So we have to tackle these one at a time. There's little the citizens can do if the government doesn't step in. I'll remind you of a time in Nigeria where we used to pay our phone bills per minute, not per second. We had just two providers at the time, I think MTN and Econet at the time. And it was about 65 naira, whether you spoke for 10 seconds or you spoke for 60 seconds, you pay the same 65 naira. But as the industry started to grow and more players came in, of course, things changed and the price went down. We all know competition drives prices down. So the government needs to, first of all, start from there in terms of service providers. The entry limitations have to be revised. They have to invite more players into the industry. Now we can all count on our fingers how many internet service providers we have in Nigeria. It shouldn't be so. I assume it is not so in India. That's why their service is very cheap. So when we have more players, internet costs will go down. So at least that's one cost out of the way. And that will be able to reach everyone in the country, not just middle class and up. Another thing the government can do for everyone, again, I'm not just speaking about private schools, is partnerships. So we can have public-private partnerships where because the private schools, we tend to have access to more funding, or maybe not that we have access, we manage our funding better. So we're able to get better value from whatever it is we have. So we can afford to send our teachers on trainings in Harvard. We can afford to, we have access to all of these things. So we have the knowledge. We would like to share it. I, for one, I would like to share my knowledge for free. I don't even have to charge. I want to train other teachers. So I will be very interested in public and private partnership where school owners like myself who have access to these Western and modern technology and all of that, the education, the training and all of that, I want to be able to pass on that knowledge to teachers in public schools so that we can impact beyond our own space. As Dumebi said, education as a public service, not just a business. And then for us, of course, as we're impacting, the government can do certain things for private schools to support them. For instance, access to loans. We should have good loan structures available to us. As the world is developing, as education is evolving, there are things we need to do. Sometimes we don't have the funds to do these things. If you go to a commercial bank, your interest rate starts from 25% and up with all the limitations that come with it. Schools should have access to good loan facilities, especially in this period. And the schools that have loans already running, the government needs to step in with the banks and ensure that we have good moratorium during this period. Nobody's, as Karima or someone said, no one is collecting the type of fees they were collecting before. Some schools are not collecting anything at all. I know of a school in Benin where the owner had just taken a commercial loan for expansion in her school because, of course, the school is growing, they need facilities. So she took a bank loan. And this happened, she just finished her renovation in February, hoping to recoup from the fees and everything that will come in third term. And alas, there was no third term. Her school is not for middle income. Her school is for low income families. So they had no access to internet education or online learning. So she has basically collected nothing since March or since January, because we collect fees in January. And the bank is on her to pay back. So she's thinking of selling her property, thinking of selling her car, because she has to start making repayments. Some banks were good enough. I know GTB did a 6-month moratorium for some schools. 6 months is not enough because we've been at home for 6 months now, and we don't know how long we'll be at home for. So if my 6 months ended in July or in August, and I'm supposed to start repayments in September, how is that going to work? Where am I going to get the money from? So the government needs to step in to ensure that schools do not close down due to inability to repay their loans, inability to repay their teachers. They need to step in and bail out the schools one way or another. Provide loans, long-term loans. We're not talking 2 years, long-term loans that the schools can plan on. And so that we can also give back in our own way. So I think these are some of the ways that the government can help us and the service providers can help us as well. Just a quick one. I know they also did this Empower project one time. So we can do things like that, provide digital tools for the teachers, train them on how to use it so that the children in public schools can have access as well, because COVID-19 didn't give us time to prepare. And there had been a gap already between children that go to private schools and children that go to public schools. Now, COVID-19 has widened that gap, and it will continue to widen if the government does not step in. And lastly, if I would just like to add again, since it's my one chance, let me use it. The government should not limit the private schools that can afford to do online learning just because public schools cannot do it, because it feels like the government was holding back private schools. Private schools were ready to forge on with online learning. Many of their children had access to it, and the government comes out with a regulation and says, don't do third term, put third term on hold until we're all ready to do third term. And these children are sitting at home, they have the iPad, they have the internet service. Instead of learning, they were playing games and, playing at home just because the government says don't do third term. So those type of regulations don't help us. Yes, we understand that the low-income families don't have access to this, but I don't think it's fair to deprive everyone just because the government hasn't provided infrastructure for the low-income families. So please, let us keep learning. That's my message today.
Thank you very much, Oseh. You had a one chance, and believe me, you took it very well. Thank you so much. You're giving us a lot to ponder on and act on. I would like to assure you, in the usual practice of Digital Africa, your comments, your position would be delivered and expressed to the highest levels of authorities in throughout Africa, and African leaders will be looking at this. Now, just to extend that line of thought, I know Karima has been itchy. This, like I said at the beginnings, is the space for women. Learning, teaching, growing, it's women are just the best at doing this. Karima, you are very passionate about youths, all right? And learning, every time you talk about learning, the default is children and youth, because that's the stage where you are like a sponge. You really, really absorb so much. What should a young person be preparing to do or be doing at this time? As we all know, there is the talk around a possibility of a second wave. We don't know how long this will last. We don't know if next time in Africa there will be this again. So I would like you to please quickly, in 1 minute, we're running out of time. Give us a sense of what young people should be doing to take advantage of the new normal in learning.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. First of all, I just want to emphasize that digital tools or platforms or distance learning is just a tool, not the end itself. I think the problem during this time, as we are not prepared enough, we're caught by the surprise that we focused more on the tools rather than the pedagogy, rather than the education system itself that needs to be changed. And I think here there are many opportunities, as we saw many young people are innovative enough to create digital platforms based on the evaluation of the distance learning that was provided by different governments to adopt those platforms to the needs of young people. And I think this is so smart. We need to encourage social entrepreneurship in the field of education. And we have a lot of young innovators in Africa who created very, very adaptable platforms in terms of that. And they have provided it even for free for both teachers and students to finish their education, and they trained them on that. I think the opportunities are important here. And in terms of, I want to outline it for three major points. First of all, is capacity building. I think we need to promote a digital mindset because we're not yet ready yet. So digital mindset, this is both for government officials, for teachers, and also for students, and also for teacher parents association. This is first. Second, I think we need to advocate to move from teachers to move teachers or transform teachers from lecturers to coach, because the young people receive information differently online. So I think the way we're dealing with education online is very different. In terms of pedagogy, I think we need to take into consideration this digital transformation, and also artificial intelligence, because there are many studies stating that in the next 10 years there will be more than 300 million jobs that will be lost all across the world because of artificial intelligence. So we need to include different ways to adapt and to make young people more employable for the future. And I want to share a little experience here. Many people, young people, during this period lost their jobs. A lot. Millions of Africans lost their jobs. And we are creating an initiative so that young people will not be living in a status quo, because we're going to live with this virus for a long time. Many African countries are going back to lockdown. So how are we going to help these young people to live, but also to finish their education? Is that many young people during this period of time discovered they have a lot of talents, different other talents. So the idea here is to use what we call entertainment education, using the talents of these young people to monetize their talents online, providing them with an opportunity to share their talents and expertise and teach online and gain money from teaching online while monitoring their own schedule. In that way, we are temporarily, helping these young people not to be jobless, finding opportunities online, sharing their knowledge with other young people. So we're focusing on the learning process, but also we're teaching them how to monetize their talents, because many, they have degrees, they have certification, they have their own way of teaching, and they use gamification, they use different other digital tools in teaching, adapted to this generation Y that is socially engaged. We're talking today about social distancing, but I'm stating that this is physical distancing, because young people are already socially engaged in digital platforms and in social media platforms. The last point is to help teacher parents associations and students associations to advocate for public dialogue and consultation with governments, so that their input and evaluation of the current education system will be taken into consideration in recognizing distance learning, and also changing the pedagogy of learning so that it could be adapted to them. As Dr. said, it should be students focus and not teacher focus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karima. As we round off, I would like all the panelists in 30 seconds to prepare give us your final thoughts. If there are questions and answers, I know there are a couple already. I'd like for us to take one or two. So my colleagues would assist us in the background to highlight what those questions are. So as those come on board, I would like to ask Doctor, who is here with me in the studio, to give us his final thought, unless, of course, there are questions that come that you need to speak to. One of the things I would like someone to address, perhaps, in the final thought, is the challenge of people with disability and then children requiring assistance. The general principle, most people with a permanent disability will require assistance throughout their learning. But for regular kids who don't have a permanent disability, from time to time, we will see kids who require assisted learning at different phases of their learning life. So if you'd like to mention that as part of your closing remark, that would be good. But I would like to see this new normal. Should they, how would they be part of the equation and the entire thought process? Dr. Victor, please.
Let me try addressing the issue of people with assisted learning. I know a lot can be done. In my primary office, the Nigerian Educational Research and Development Council, we have a Braille press that is thoroughly equipped and well manned. So such a place could be encouraged to start thinking in this direction. And I know that people who are visually impaired have access to cell phones, and there are mechanisms in which they can type. I'm sure that those can be successfully transformed into learning experience for them. But my last thoughts on what should be done, starting from the most important, is that tech companies shouldn't just stay away and concentrate on the idea of providing platforms. Meanwhile, they are the ones who have the bulk of the money. And in the end, they will make more money from it. So I think there should be something they should do, which is to have greater interface with curriculum developers and designers and other stakeholders in education, such that they can help them structure pedagogy in such a way that they can help learners. to get properly engaged in e-learning and be e-learning compliant. I think that's the most important takeaway from here. Then the other is in terms of, for those of us who are in the classrooms, who have direct interaction with the students. Assessment needs to change. Bearing in mind that all these challenges are there, stopping people or reducing their ability to learn. So pedagogy assessment should go beyond the issue of grading as we know it, to having a designed assessment system which ensures that students retain interest in education, cut off anxieties that come with not being able to do well when you know that you ought to do well. So that is very essential. The others have been mentioned, but for the purpose of my own background, let me say that emphasis should shift from coverage of curriculum. Curriculum is designed for a term, and most teachers are far more interested in making sure that they run through the curriculum, no matter what time frame is allowed. I think we should play down on that curriculum coverage and take a step further, which is the in thing in e-learning, to discover the potentials of students and make sure that resources for them to get those potentials properly engaged are available to them. And in this space, the teacher should go beyond a teacher to being a guide.
So that would be a good place to leave it, Dr. Victor. Thank you very much. Dumebi, please, 30 seconds. We really are out of time. I'm not sure we can take those questions if we can, but please, 30 seconds, your closing thoughts.
Thank you so much. I think the most important thing is for us to appreciate the level of disruption this has caused. Over 1.6 billion people are disrupted in terms of learning across the world. So the number saying that goes that you can't solve the problem with the same mindset it was created. So it requires a complete rethinking process. It requires the government, it requires the educationists, it requires businessmen, it requires people who play in the technology space to come together to create a multifaceted solution towards solving this, because it cuts across the government, it cuts across the private sector, it cuts across practically everything that we do in this particular sector. So it requires a complete rethinking process towards solving this particular problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dumebi. Karima, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think there are two things. Encourage students' associations to be part of the policy-making process in building more inclusive digital policies and also education. And the last point is to encourage and promote youth entrepreneurship in the education sector.
All right, thank you very much. Those are the panelists. I'll just like on behalf of Oseh to say that she made a lot of points around intervention required for schools, for students, for teachers, and also volunteered her time to be able to provide what they've learned in the private sector and share this with teachers who teach millions of children in the public sector. And we didn't get to hear from Dr. Sandip. And as we close and I introduce the panelists again, Dr. Sandip is a lecturer at the American University of Nigeria, a renowned scholar. One of the things he shared with us just before this session started, unfortunately he couldn't join the session, was that the cost of access of bandwidth, from the vivid illustration he gave to us, it is clear why and until and unless Africa fix that challenge, it will be very difficult for Africa to compete with kids from India in the long run. The reason? It costs a child about 300 times more to get the same amount of data for learning in Africa, or at least in Nigeria, as it would in India. That was his submission to us earlier, and he gave a clear illustration to support support that. So thank you very much, Dr. Sandip. Thank you very much, Karima. Karima is a multi-award winner, passionate about children, and founder of Africa My Home. Thank you very much, Oseh. Oseh runs the school, CEO, Alderwood International Schools. Thank you very much, Dr. Victor. I'm privileged to share the studio with you. Legal advisor, head of legal Nigeria Education and Development Council, and also a part-time lecturer. Thank you very much, Dumebi, CEO of a tech business solution company running education here in Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for spending your time with us at Digital Africa. We've looked at the future of learning, the new normal, and please watch out for this space for what Digital Africa will be doing around the intervention that have been proposed at this session. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you.